Hey y'all, welcome to Broken Buddha. Monk Joseph here. I actually had to make one more video today. I want to talk about something that's not really talked about much in Kung Fu, and that's going to be the Shaolin origins of where the religious and spiritual practices came from. So a quick breakdown. Batuo was the first bringer of Buddhism to China and brought and was given the land for the Shaolin Temple. Damo was the second guy that came and was sent there because he irritated the ruler at the time. But what he brought with him is what I've tried to help identify, because from him arriving, that's where Buddhism met Taoism and became Zen or Chan Buddhism. I know this is heavily argued and disputed, and probably people may say things about that here. But before that, what did he bring? Well, I happen to have a book that illustrates some of this stuff, and I can explain some of it out of it. I had to bring it out because I'm not 100% on some of this stuff memorized wise. But I I've done a lot of research and study into the patron saint of the Shaolin Temple, Vajrapani. He's one of six main figures of spiritual influence that is the core of what Dhammo brought, or Mahayana Buddhism. I want to use that term lightly because this is almost the point when you get into Mahasiddha work where you go from Mahayana to Vajrayana, right? And what is a Mahasiddha? This is where it's going to get very controversial, because I would argue that not the beings at their core of where they came from, but what they were doing, the curriculum they were using, one of the curriculums they were using. When you see somebody like Buddha, Yeshua, Jesus for those who don't know, Damo, Pamasambhava, that is technically this. They're doing the same thing. It's called a Mahasiddha. Some people call it a sage. Some people call it an advanced yogi, enlightened beings. It doesn't really matter what you call it. They didn't want anyone to drop knee and worship. They wanted you to follow in their path and try to figure out the puzzle too, like they did. This is just an opinion coming from a realized praying monk. But so let's go ahead and get into it. Mahasiddhas. A lot of this information I got came out of this book here, made by the Sandra Foundation, written by Jungung Kongtrell, called Mahasiddha Practice. I was familiar with a lot of this work beforehand, but this is where the lineage of information that you can still track today. This is why Tibetan Buddhism is so important if you study Kung Fu, because they kept, the most immaculate records of a lot of this stuff. And that's why, this is also, it gives you the explanation of why you have some of these beings in here, because this is the original practice out of India. This isn't something that came out of Tibet or out of China. So you have, your six main spiritual influences being, most people know him as Manjushri, but in this book he's known as Lord Manjughosha. That is an older term and name for Manjushri. Then you have, of course, Lord Vajrapani, Lord Amiteus, or Amitabha, if you're unfamiliar, Tera, Jambala, and then in a separate section they have Avalokiteshvara, or Chenrezig Guan Yin, as you know it in Chinese culture. All right. So to me, it's important to identify these things. You're not going to become a teacher equal to the great sages if you don't understand that you are supposed. If you can't become their equal, if you're not their equal, we're not going to do it the way that they did it, because obviously they had something going that we don't understand. Arguably, because once you have realization, you go into enlightenment. But I mean, as far as like being an incarnation, miraculously conceived, like I don't know. So I've got company here now. This will pass in a second. Don't worry about it. They just like to bark at me and say hi and whatnot, but it usually only lasts like a few minutes. Doggy's next door. Anyway, see. So anyway, that's what I see. This is, the Mahasiddha practice, the Mahasiddha lineage, the spiritual influences of what you understand as deities. If you understand Hinduism, Buddhism, you understand that the idea of a deity is very heavily skewed between Western and Eastern thought. I mean, especially if you go back as far as like Shaktiism, where everything is going to a thing that is just, the different Sanskrit prayers or different programs. I mean, you're just throwing a rock into a liquid computer and getting a program wave back. That's the best I can explain it. Do your own research. And each program has apparently its own sentience, like infinity, like Earth, all these things. And that's where you have, go back to the religion videos and you'll see more of what I'm talking about. But yeah, so that's it. And I've done some of the things there, more or less unofficially, but that book is how to prescribed by the records inherited in the Rime movement of the Tibetan Buddhists. So there you have it. Look into it, and I believe that's a tricky one with empowerments with this, because being Mahayana, if your faith is there, if you're of the experiencer sort, you should be able to access the spiritual influence or anything you got to do without the book. But with it, I believe they have all the empowerments in there. The way that it's written is that you have the empowerments in the book to do them. I have a few more steps that I'm doing before that because I'm going through a whole process. But feel free to grab it and check it out. Because the only reason I mentioned I wasn't sure about, because in Vajrayana you do have to have the Vajrasattva empowerment to clear enough karmic traces to experience things properly. That is an opinion also. I'm sure I'll catch frack for that one day as well. But yeah, there you have it. I just wanted to level the playing field with people trying to reach for this. You really need to. They are your teacher, but they want you to be their equal, or else they wouldn't have left the records on how to become their equal. All right. So there you have it. Word up to Damo. Yep. Peace and blessings, and thanks for stopping by.